So today we have episode number, what is it, 252. Oh my gosh, time flies by. 252. And today we are going to focus on understanding what is forgiveness. So if you have your Course in Miracles book, you are going to be inside of the manual for, or I'm sorry, inside of the workbook. So in within the lessons, go to page 401. And if this is not immediately inside of, or we don't have the same page numbers, it will be right before lesson 221. So the Course in Miracles, just a quick little note, Course in Miracles, the workbook is divided into two parts. The first part is lessons 1 through 220. Those first 220 lessons break down what the ego is about, what the Holy Spirit is attempting to teach us. It gives us what our purpose is. The second part that starts with lesson 221, these are very short lessons, usually two to a page, and they focus on providing us a repetitive kind of a process by which we are making a declaration, and it's a communication with God. We're just in total communion with God. That's what those lessons 221 forward are. To prepare us for those lessons, we are given, besides the introduction for that part two, we are given very clear instructions for specific subjects. Today, we're going to look at what is forgiveness. Understanding forgiveness according to the Course in Miracles is key because the entire course is designed to help us bring about the miracle. The miracle is a shift in perception. The shift in perception, in the beginning, we think we're shifting from negative to positive, or we're shifting from being angry to being happy, or we're shifting from being mad at somebody to changing our mind about them to, okay, I'll forgive, but I won't forget necessarily. That's part of the human condition. However, when you have mastered these beginning lessons, you should be able to really begin to understand what true forgiveness is about. So today we're going to focus on just that. It's a one-page description about what true forgiveness is. And the reason this is such an important thing for us to understand is because the world, while it is going through its process of awakening, as more and more people are becoming curious about, there's got to be another way, they're willing to see things differently. It is creating a momentum where more and more people are grounded in the knowingness that the only way out of the insanity of the human world, the ego-made world, we're understanding that not only is the way out through love, but more specifically, the way that we extend love, the way we truly comprehend what love is by understanding forgiveness according to the Course in Miracles. So as I'll share this visual. Most of humanity, the bulk of humanity, I'm going to say probably 80% of humanity is stuck inside of the control phase, attempting to do things their own way, my way or the highway, doing the same thing, expecting different results. Very, very much caught up in a loop. 20% of humanity is on a spiritual journey. But here's the thing. Of that 20% that is on the spiritual journey, this is just my understanding of it. 80% of them are in the curiosity phase. Of the 20%, 80% are in the curiosity phase. Most are reading self-help books. Most are, if they have a Christian or a religious kind of background, they're going deeper into their faith. I just read a statistic recently that churches, Christian churches, have seen the highest numbers of attendance in the last couple of years, something that they've been steadily declining over the last 50 years. So if you have some kind of a faith background, you grew up in a Christian family, you may be exploring, revisiting that information. Or you grew up without any kind of training and you're curious, or you grew up with some kind of training, but you don't want to go back to that one. You may be going down a more esoteric spiritual path, maybe, traditional spirituality, New Age, maybe Buddhism, maybe Hinduism. You're exploring. So 80% of the 20%, to put things in context, 80% of people in curiosity means that they're open to another way, but it doesn't mean that they have found the truth that sets them free yet. They may be exploring, but they haven't landed on what the Course in Miracles is teaching us is the only way out, which is the path of love, the path of recognizing that we are one. We're one with everything. That's why we come to a place of peace with all that is. We come to a place of recognizing that it's what you do unto another, you do to yourself. In the curiosity phase, I'm going to say the bulk of the people really haven't done the deeper work. So I'm going to say 80% are there. Of the remaining 20%, my guesstimate is that about 15% are in the unlearning phase. If you do the math, it's very simple. That leaves 5% of 20% that are moving into the wisdom phase. I consider the teachings of the Course in Miracles what gets us to that 5%, to that small number. 5% of the 20% of the collective of humanity. So 15% are doing the unlearning work. That means they're diving into their childhood, they're looking at the traumas, recognizing, beginning to train their mind to recognize that they're not what happened to them. They are the presence of awareness that was there when things happened to them, meaning they're beginning to identify with that eternal soul that has never been affected, never been touched. There is something inside of us that is holy and pure and innocent that has never been touched. That's the part that we are awakening to receiving, to accepting. Most of the people in the curiosity phase are reading books, they're going to workshops, they're talking spirituality, they're buying the beads and the baubles and the cards and doing the readings. All necessary. That is an important step. I think in my newsletter that just went out today, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, that's exactly what I was talking about in that newsletter. Awakening, that's not the end. Awakening is the beginning of the journey. That is when you begin to start waking up. I mean, every single one of us, think about it this way. When we go to sleep at night and we set our alarm to wake up, when let's say that alarm goes off, that alarm is the beginning of the awakening. You start opening up your sleepy eyes. You may be rubbing, like I tell my little babies, get the sleepies out of your eyes. All of that has happened while you're still in bed. You're still wrapped up in your blankets. The room is still dark. You're awakening. You're not awake. You're awakening. You have to understand the distinction. Awakening is what curiosity is all about. Something is telling you to follow something other than what has been familiar. You're no longer doing the same thing expecting a different result. You finally have matured enough to understand, I can't do the same thing and get a different result. I have to do something different. Then you move into the curiosity phase. So if out of the 20% of humanity that is moving, in that awakening process, the bulk of them are at the beginning stages of curiosity, going to all kinds of events, listening to all kinds of teachers, learning meditation, going into breath work events. Maybe they're participating in sound healing. They're doing all kinds of things because they're hurting, but they're no longer doing the same old thing. They're no longer looking or listening to the same therapist or going to the same service expecting a different result, praying the same prayers that they've been praying for 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years. They're doing something totally different. When they're ready, they move into the unlearning phase, which is where they have to train their mind to change their mind. So you can't expect a different result until you get different information in your mind. So you fill your mind in the curiosity phase with new information, but it stays at the head level. Unlearning is the beginning process of recognizing that inside of you is something that has never been touched. It is what is eternal within you, what is perfect within you, what is spirit, and it is what is going to live on forever. It's the part of you that chooses to have a human experience. You're beginning to realize that there's a part of you that signed you up for this trip. And in the beginning, some people may be angry. I didn't sign up for this trip. Well, yes, guess what? There's a part inside of you. You need to know that one in you that made the decision to put you into this journey, that chose to have this specific incarnation, that made this decision to go through the process of separation, because that one that signed you up, that's where all your power is. That's the you that is totally, completely certain that you're going to be okay. That one needs to wake up and take a hold of the wheel. And until then, the ego's running the show. The ego's the one who is in control of the wheel, the one that's been making all the decisions. But it's taking you around in circles and looping you lifetime after lifetime because it only knows how to do one thing. And that's to keep you in a state of total and complete delusion, confused. You don't really know who you are. And the only things that you can do is swing on a pendulum from fear to not quite love, because the ego doesn't know love, but it moves you in fear and fake joy. I'm going to call it that because it's dependent on what happens on the outside. You're happy if, you're happy when, you're happy, when you get something. You're happy when you get promoted, when you get a raise, when you have a baby, when you get a promotion, when you get a proposal. Your happiness is very dependent on specific things having to happen because it's conditional love. There has to be a condition for you to feel love, that's what the ego, it's all that the ego knows. It cannot do anything else. So don't expect your ego to guide you to love. Ego will not guide you to love. The part of you that knows love, which is the essence of love itself, is beginning to awaken, is beginning to cause you to want something else. You're beginning to feel the vibration of more, but your mind has been trained to not remember that. Your mind has been trained to believe things that block you from that awareness. So something inside of you begins to get activated, and then your brain is like, okay, I don't have the beliefs that match what I'm feeling inside. So that's why we go in the curiosity phase. We fill our mind with information that is resonant with what we're feeling inside, but we can't quite pinpoint it yet. The reason we can't quite pinpoint it is because we have layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of lies between the truth of who we are. That's like, it's pulsing, it's tapping in there, it's going, da, 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 hello, come get me. And your mind is out here focused on the outer world, paying the bills and trying to survive, day to day, or worrying so much about what to wear to the next event or not being left out. Your mind is distracted out here, but on the inside, there's this tap, 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 tap. So you've got to do the work of changing your mind shifting your beliefs. So you fill your mind with wonderful information, esoteric information, metaphysical stuff, things about past lives and future lives, and extraterrestrial things and disclosure and all of those wonderful things, which are all beautiful and absolutely wonderful. As you fill your mind, what happens is you're letting go of beliefs that are not true. This voice gets a little louder. You let go of more beliefs, this voice gets a little louder. Eventually, the two meet. This is what inside of the Course in Miracles we refer to, that place where we begin to experience embodiment, meaning your mind has the right information, correct, meaning truth, and you're hearing the inside, what's calling you home. It's getting louder and louder because you have less distractions, less focus on the outside. You're more focused within. So you're coming to meet each other. The unlearning phase is that process of coming to meet each other. As you begin to get closer, pretty close, where you now really know that nothing real can be threatened because you recognize nothing unreal exists. You come to the place where you realize, and we have to have this realization. Otherwise, you cannot move into wisdom. The realization becomes where you begin to accept that if God says that you are who you are, you have to accept it. You have that realization, oh, if I don't fully accept who I am, if I don't begin to acknowledge what the Course says is true about me, if you don't begin to realize how holy you are, if you don't begin to spend time in that conscious recognition, acceptance of who you are as this magnificent child of God, you can't move into the wisdom phase. This is why, of the 20% that are on the planet, 80% are over here, 15% haven't quite fully come to that realization. About 5% are accepting, I am the child of God. I don't need to prove this to anybody. You operate from a place of humility. You operate in a knowing that not only are you holy, and this is the trick, so is everybody else. When you come to the recognition that so is everybody else, everybody is a holy child of God. We are all exactly the same. But when you come to wisdom, you focus on that light that is inside of them. You focus on that tap, tap, tap inside of them. So when you meet somebody who's out here focused on the outer world, doing the same thing, expecting different results, you see that they are totally lost in the illusion. But your focus is on the inside. Tap, 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 tap. Come get me. You notice the light that's inside of them. They tell you how bad they are, or how horrible life is, or they're complaining about the politics, or they're angry that you're not taking the next shot that the government is telling you you're supposed to take. They're out here in survival, in anger, in fear, in worry, in control, and you can see past that. You see the soul inside going, tap, 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 let me out, help me out of here. And what you do with wisdom is you focus on that. And you practice what the Course teaches is true empathy. I see your discomfort. I hear your fear, your worry. During COVID, I had so many friends. It's wild. In my spiritual community, where I thought, COVID was a big realization for me. Just because you're spiritual doesn't mean that you have transcended your fears. As a matter of fact, that's when I saw most spiritual people that I knew, some teachers, some healers, went into terror about COVID. COVID was going to get them. Well, if you've done the curiosity, you found out your thoughts create your reality. But if you haven't done the unlearning, if you haven't let go of the lie that something external can hurt you, you're going to be in fear of that external thing because your mind's not trained to go within and trust that knowingness that tells you you're going to be fine. That's going to guide you through whatever happens. So I'm in a place where I have no fear of something external. And you know why I had no fear of something external? Because there is no external, nothing real can be threatened. When you tap into, when you live in awareness and you're sitting inside of the seat of your soul, you know who you are as God created you. Once you've made that total complete acceptance, I am as God created me, and I was created to create, then you have to be really honest. If you are believing something can hurt you, then you have to accept responsibility that you're giving power to that thing to hurt you, meaning you at some level want to be hurt by that thing so that you can have the experience of transcending that. Well, if you've already transcended that and you've already come inside to the truth of who you are, why would you set up imaginary obstacles for yourself? Why would you set up trouble along the way if you know you create your reality? It's like ding, 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 ding. Hello. You know, like in that movie. What was the name of that movie? Back to the Future. Hello, McFly. You've got to come inside and acknowledge, if I create my reality, I'm going to create a reality where, number one, nothing outside of me has power. There's no bug, there's no bacteria, there's no parasite, there's no, nothing that has power over me. When you accept that, fully accept that, and maybe you might have a tiny little doubt, but honesty keeps you honest, right? You can say, okay, I may be having a little concern here. Holy Spirit, guide me through. I've got to go out in public and I've got a little concern. You may want to put on a mask. You may want to do that, but you are honest that you're having a little fear. You don't project it on others and say you're the cause of my getting sick. You don't blame somebody else for what can happen to you. You accept that that is inside of you, and that's something that you need to address. So during COVID, amazing time to become really clear that vibrationally I was in a different place than the majority of the people that I was hanging out with. The majority of the people that I was hanging out with were not only in fear, but they thought I could get them sick. And because I wasn't wearing a mask and I wasn't participating in that, they thought that I was being unloving, not ever questioning their thoughts. If you're the creator of your reality, why are you giving me power? If you think the shot helps you, then why would me not having a shot hurt you? Those things were nonsensical. If the shot helps you, why don't you trust what they're telling you? Trust that science and accept that the shot's going to help you. But they couldn't. Why? Because they were in fear. They were in fear and they were being dishonest about all the information that they had in their head, that I create my reality, even though they recited the 5 unity principles that stated that they are the creators of their reality. They didn't want to take responsibility for the reality that they wanted. They didn't want to get sick. They didn't want to operate in wellness. That is why the small percentage of people who are operating in wisdom need to understand what forgiveness according to the Course in Miracles is all about. That time during COVID is when I doubled down to understand what forgiveness was about. And we're going to spend a little time on that today, because that is the only thing that is going to help you ground yourself in the truth of who you are, so that you can experience the wisdom of your head knows it, your heart feels it. And that is what the embodiment is. Head and heart come together. You are congruent. You're no longer a parrot talking spirituality, quoting A Course in Miracles, but on the inside, you're in fear, you're in worry, you're scared. People are going to find out that you're not congruent. All that has to go away. And the only way that can go away is through honesty. You've got to call it out. You've got to say where you're at. So let's go into page 401. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness recognizes that what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. This is the line that is going to separate the boys from the men, the girls from the women, the spiritual, parrots from those who are experiencing life as spirit. So we're going to focus on this line right now and only this line. Forgiveness recognizes what you thought others did to you has not occurred. And this is where we separate the boys from the men, the girls from, the women, the spiritual talkers from the embodiment of spirit. Because this is where we begin to hear, but they did this to me when I was 3. But he did this to me when I was 8. But she did that to me when I was 12. This is how you can tell somebody who knows spirituality, but is not yet embodying spirituality, because the ego is still playing the blame game. Somebody did something to me. Forgiveness says, it's very simple. It's a recognition that what you thought somebody did to you did not occur. And this is where the Course in Miracles draws a line in the sand. I don't care who you are and how much you quote the Course in Miracles. When I listen to people who are Course in Miracles, teachers, some very famous teachers who've written many books and get a lot of airtime, if they're out there blaming somebody else, if they're out there saying this one did that or that's the source of the problems, then they know truth. They're not living by it. And the reason they're not living by it is because they haven't fully accepted who they are as God created them, which is why they cannot accept that so is everybody else. So anytime we hold somebody out as the bad person, it is a projection of the part inside of me that I still hold guilt or shame around. So I project it on this person. You're the bad one. You're the one who did that. And until we get really clear, and again, you have to do the unlearning. You've got to do the deep dive to realize that there is a holy child inside of you waiting for you to come and claim it. That little tap, tap, tap inside, that's the light wanting to get out. And you're out here looking for the light out there, and the light's going, hello, I'm over here. So it takes an incredible amount of maturity for us to acknowledge that we are the light. It's very, very challenging to the ego mind. I mean, it's not only challenging, it's impossible for the ego mind to accept that I am not a victim of anything, because the story of the ego is founded on victimization, because that is how we get permission to not be our full potential. Because as long as I'm a victim, as long as somebody did something to me, as long as I'm damaged because of what happened to me, then I don't have to show up fully. I don't really have to bring all my talents out. I don't have to be my best self. It actually always gives us an out to not be as wonderful as we could be, to not be fully as loving as we could be, because in the back of our mind, well, I can't really be honest after what happened to me. Well, I can't really be loving, and I can't really trust everybody. I can't show you all of my talents because of what happened to me. I'm over here protecting myself. So I can't give you 100% into this relationship because I'm guarding a little part of me. I'm guarding my wounded child. I need to have energy to tend to my woundedness, which means I need to energy, because it sucks a lot of energy to keep repeating what's wrong with me. That's part of how the ego maintains its story, is it gets you to agree to protect it. I've said this so many times, but I've been a teacher, a coach for 20 years, going maybe 21 years. I cannot tell you how many times I'm trying to coach somebody into the truth of who they are, their perfection, their wholeness, but they argue for their limitations. I've had more people come to see me as many as I've had where I say, no point in coming back, because they don't want to give up that something wrong happened to them, that somebody hurt them. Well, that's great. Hold on to that story because you want to play, you want to feel the victimization. That fruit's not ripe, it's not ready. You're going to have to sit inside of that, go take more courses, read more books, and spend more money doing more things and chant and all that because you're only curious. You're not serious. If you are serious, you are going to do whatever it takes to take what the course is saying and accept the truth about it for yourself. Because this is when true liberation begins. This is when you begin the declaration of your independence from the ego. This is when you say, yes, that happened to my physical body. That happened to my identity. My ego was very offended by that situation, was very hurt by that situation, felt very betrayed by that situation. Yes, yes, yes. Put that aside. Who are you as God created you? Who are you as God created you? That eternal being, do you think that got hurt by what happened in one of your thousands of lifetimes? Use logic here. This is where we have to move beyond what we think we know and step into what God knows. This is how we really, truly cultivate trust. This is how we cultivate faithfulness. This is how we open our mind. Wow, there's way more to me than I thought. I thought I was just this wounded child with all these problems, and all I've been able to do is, drink and drug my way through life and control people and pretend that I'm something that I'm not. Now it all makes sense. I was doing all of those things because I didn't really know who I was. Now you're being more honest. Because when you say, this is who I think I am, this is who God says I am, and you separate the two to look at them and understand that they have very different vibrations. This happened to me and it hurt physically, emotionally, mentally. This hurt. Believing that I'm worthless, that hurt. Yes, yes, yes. Course doesn't tell you to deny that this happened. The Course tells you two things. You are as God created you. You're whole, perfect, and complete. There's a part inside of you. There's a light in you that's never been touched. As a matter of fact, it hasn't been seen. It doesn't come out very often. The second part is that you need to deny that this touches this. Don't deny this happened, but you have to be honest and acknowledge this did not touch this. Because if you are as God created you, in innocence, in perfection, in wholeness, where in there does it say that any of this is damaged? You have to be honest. And your ego doesn't want you to accept that you have to declare, yes, there is holiness, there's perfection, there's magnificence in who I am. That declaration of acceptance of who you are as God created you is the beginning of the embodiment. Now you are filling your body with the frequency of the truth of who you are. Only that will cause all of this to become insignificant. And when I say insignificant, it's not that you deny it, is that it has no power over you. It no longer has power. It remains in your memory banks like a picture in a photo album. It's there. You can draw upon it anytime. You can go back and visit it anytime you want to. You can go sit with that 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old that was hurt. You can go sit and visit that memory anytime because it's a memory. And thoughts do not leave their source. Every thought you have had is still there. You can visit it all you want. But eventually you realize, why visit the past? Why try to keep alive a story that every time you go into it, it pulls you down. It draws you down because it's dense, it's heavy. It holds you, it grounds you in the third dimension. If you've made the decision that you want total liberation, you want total freedom, and this is what separates, to me, this is what separates my clients. Those who say they want it, and we keep asking the same questions year after year, keep revisiting the same story, they're curious. From those who really are serious, they're willing to try on. What does it feel like to be holy? Let me just sit with that. If holiness is the truth of who I am, what does that feel like? Let yourself try it on like the new costume if you want to look at it that way. Let me try on holiness instead of, oh, okay, I put on my victim suit. Yeah, I know what that one feels like. But holy, I can expand. I've got light that shines. What does holy feel like? When you're serious about wanting to try on what holiness, what wholeness, what magnificence, perfection, beauty is all about, you will soon realize this is like an adult. Let's say you're 60 years old putting on a 2-year-old's outfit, because that's pretty much when that story began to get formed. Go try and put on, your grandchild's pajamas on. It's not possible. You probably will barely get it through your finger. Maybe you might, if you're lucky, you might get your arm a little bit through it. There is no freaking way I could wear one of Ellie's pajamas. But that's what we are doing when I am this victim, is you're squeezing yourself into 2-year-old pajamas. But if you decide to really express yourself, you've got to grow into the truth of who you are, because it's way, 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 way bigger than we've been told that it is. Our light must shine outward. That's why awakening begins to happen. We've been pushing down the light of creation, and it's like the atom bomb. It wants to explode and be itself. So back to this sentence. Forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. You have to decide, nope, my soul is fine. My soul has never been touched by anybody. And neither has any other soul. Souls are never, ever, ever, ever touched. When you can accept that fully, because you're done pretending that you're less than what you are, you have joined the radical honesty committee, crowd, group, whatever you want to call it, tribe. You're not playing with that same old sappy story, and you're practicing what it's like to really be who you are. Then forgiveness is really beginning, because forgiveness is the recognition. If you take the word forgiveness, it's forgiving. That's why we forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's what Jesus taught us. Father, forgive them, for they remember not who they are. They don't know what they're doing because they don't remember who they are. Forgiving them, it's forgiving. Forgiveness means you are accepting, I am this light. This light is for giving it to the world. Instead of holding it under a bushel, I'm going to let this little light shine. This love that I feel, instead of holding it down here, it's for giving it to humanity. This peace that I'm feeling, instead of holding it down here, it's for giving it to humanity. That's what forgiving is about. It is for you to give it away. But your mind has to be trained in that. That's why this is the realm of wisdom. Ah, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. I've been pretending my whole life to be what I'm not, so that eventually, when I'm ready, the soul that signed me up for this trip, and by the way, it's a return trip. There's two parts to it. There's the coming in here and forgetting. Then there's a tap, tap, tap. I'm going to remind you. Then you come inside and you begin to discover who you are. Then you remember who you are, and then you pop out of that. That's the return trip. The return trip is once you know who you are, the stuff of the world has no appeal to you except for you to play with it. It's no different than my granddaughter's toy house. She has a fun time playing with it. The world then becomes your playground. Why? Because life is meant to be fun and easy. It truly is meant to be enjoyed, and the suffering is in the third level. We all have to come to the third level to, because that's where the real volunteers come. That's where the courageous people come. You come down to the bottom, forget who you are, and then go through the process of remembering. If you remember, then you can move on to the fun and easy part. If you don't remember, well, you're going to have to remain there, because if you don't remember, it's because you don't want to. I know this is a hard one to believe, but once you accept how powerful you are, then if you're still experiencing what you don't like, it's because you want to have that experience. And please don't tell me, but what about the children who are being hurt? I get it. I get it. As adults, it's our responsibility to assist those who can't verbalize. It's our responsibility to see the light in another, and call out the injustices by saying, hey, not by blaming the bad person and continuing to perpetuate the victim perpetrator mindset, but by saying, hey, you are both magnificent beings. You stop doing that abusing, and it's time for you to reclaim who you are. And the only way to do that is we need to understand forgiveness. We have to forgive everybody. Otherwise, we don't move out of this dimension. And again, that is part of the honesty that is required. You cannot move to a higher dimension until you are totally, completely clear that your soul has never been affected, because it's that soul that knows who it is that has expressed itself, expanded out of its limitations, that plays in the fifth dimension. Egos don't go to there's no, you cannot be an ego in the fifth dimension. It's too dense. It's like, think of the ocean. Up here, you've got certain little animals that can float around up here, and this is where they live. But down here is where the rocks are. Well, think of the ego as a rock. You can float, you can want to float all you want, but it's not going to happen. You can start here, plop, plop, you're going to go right to the bottom. You have to decide to drop the weights and ascend into the fifth dimension. And the only thing that ascends you is truth. That's why the truth sets you free. And you have to be honest. Are you ready for the truth? What's it, Jack Nicholson in that movie, A Few Good Men? You can't handle the truth. Well, most people can't handle the truth, because the truth says that you got to take responsibility for how you feel. You're the only one who's creating your reality. That's what makes the course so simple. You don't like what you're experiencing? Stop thinking the thoughts that create it. I know it's not an easy thing. It's simple, but it's not easy because it takes a lot of repetition. It takes a lot of time. So let's go to sentence number 2. So forgiveness, it does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees there was no sin. Jesus gave us that example on the cross. He went through that crucifixion process to show us they never killed my soul. 3 days later, what's happening? His soul, his spirit is walking around town. How can that be? Because he's not his body. Forgive them. They don't remember who they are. They killed the body, but the body is not what he is. Okay, that stays in the third dimension. What ascends out of the third dimension? His soul. What did his soul do while it was inside his body? Saw the soul in another one and said, I'm not going to blame you, brother. I'm not going to blame you. You're just playing your part. You're playing the role that you're playing of crucifying me. Thank you for playing that role, because you're helping me teach the lesson that I'm not a body. I am free. This is why we have to understand the power of forgiveness. It allows us to let go of the lies and ascend into a whole new realm of existence. It doesn't pardon. Oh, you did a terrible thing to my body. I'm going to forgive what you did to my body. It doesn't say that. It says you never did anything to my soul. Huge, huge distinction. Nothing real can be threatened. The soul cannot be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. The body is a temporary costume. When you drop it, when you drop the ego identity, it doesn't exist. I mean, it's not anything you can hold on to. What happens to the body? It turns into dust. There's nothing there. Soul remains forever. I've been visited by my mom's soul. I've never been revisited by my mom's ashes. They don't come around and don't sprinkle themselves on me because they're not real. They just go back to the earth. Then he goes on to say, and in that view are all your sins forgiven. This is key. If you want all of your errors to be forgiven, you must forgive the errors of another. And you forgive them by saying, they didn't touch my soul. I release you from the guilt and the shame of thinking you hurt me. This is why the ego loops lifetime after lifetime. We move from victim to bully, because I feel, you hurt me, I'm a victim. Now the bully thinks, oh my gosh, I did something terrible to you. In the next lifetime, they've got to make up for that. The way we end the karmic cycles is by acknowledging, no, nobody here has been affected. I see your light. You didn't touch my light. We're good. We're good. Let's move on. Those souls who acknowledge that, they graduate and move on to the next dimension. And you can want to go to that dimension all you want, but if you hold an ounce of judgment, an ounce of believing anything has hurt you, then you are blaming somebody else. You're projecting your unhealed guilt on them. That's that subconscious guilt. Then you should feel bad for what you did to me, is the tether to the third dimension. In this view, in this way of forgiveness, all your sins forgiven, free and clear. It's like your passport gets stamped, you can go on to the fifth dimension. What is sin except a false idea about God's Son? Forgiveness merely sees its falsity and therefore lets it go. What then is free to take its place is now the will of God. This is what is so important to understand. The idea that somebody can hurt you means that you are not powerful, that you are fallible. If you entertain that somebody hurt you or that you have power over another, you are tethering yourself to a world of limitation. Let me repeat that again. What is sin except a false idea about God's Son? It's stating in its own, insane egoic way that I can be hurt by something outside of me. The will of God cannot be accepted. Here, sentence number 7. What then is free? What then is free to take its place is now the will of God. So, what do we want to replace this idea that somebody hurt me with? Well, with the will of God. Not my will, your will be done. And guess what? Course in Miracles lays out God's will perfectly. God wills that we be happy. God wills that we extend the kingdom. God wills that we have fun, that we have joy, that we have, just opportunities for expansion. That's all that God wants. But if you're not ready to play at that level of joy and happiness, no matter what, consistently, unceasingly, peace and joy and nothing but creation and extension, you're saying, no, I want to live inside of limitation. Do you see why you can't send a boy to do the job of a man, a girl to do the job of a woman? using those as analogies. You can't send an ego to do the job of spirit. Spirit doesn't hold anybody accountable, only itself. If I want to be happy, let me do God's will. Ego says, if I want to be happy, I need somebody to buy me a big ring. If I want to be happy, I need millions in the bank. Ego has conditions that the outside has to meet. You accept that nothing outside of you has power over you. Now you are free to do God's will, and God wills that you be happy, but it comes from the inside. And the rings may come and all the beautiful things may come, but not to fill you up. They come as part of what you get to play with because you're no longer attached to it. The human mind cannot fathom being able to have anything you want and play with it until you get bored with it and move on to the next game. But watch a little child. That's what they do. They play with that toy till they're done. They go to the next toy. They're not worried that they're not going to have more toys. Humans are worried that we're not going to have more toys. We work really hard to hold on to the toys that we have. But the toys that we have weigh us down because they have attachments that are attached to, you have to keep me safe. Safety comes from knowing that we are in the mind of God, accepting who we are and doing God's will. So that's why it takes a lot to move through this process of total and complete unlearning of all the lies that you've picked up since you were a child. Go back and take an inventory of the beliefs that you were taught as a baby and through your life, and the truth that was true when you were born. You're going to see that the truth that was true when you were born, it's about, you can sum it up about like this. And the lies that you picked up, you're going to need volumes and volumes and volumes of books with all the beliefs about it. The truth that you are, look at any little newborn baby. Joyful, peaceful, happy, playful, giggly. Paragraph number 2. An unforgiving thought is one which makes a judgment that it will not raise to doubt, although it is not true. What is so profound about this particular statement is that the one who will not raise things to doubt is the righteous ego that says, no, there can't be another way. He hurt me. That's it. Nothing else. You're judge and jury. He hurt me. She hurt me. That's it. I'm damaged because of what he or she did to me. Won't even raise it to doubt. That is the trickery of the ego. That's why it's so insidious, because we need to be right about what they did to us. The process of awakening is to begin to question. That's why curiosity is the only step out of control. The ego wants to control the narrative. No, they hurt me. Holy Spirit inside wants to see things differently. There's a willingness to see if there's another way. And again, the Course doesn't say that we're going to deny that what happened happened. We're just going to deny that it had power over our soul, had power over our spirit. So you bring it into doubt. Maybe, what if I'm wrong about this? What if and you don't even have to say I'm wrong. What if there's another way to look at this? When you begin to look at there is another way to look at this, you begin to move the path of curiosity. Holy Spirit's going to meet you and have you connect with the right people, the right books, the right places where you will hear of people who had the same thing happen to them, but they forgave and they found freedom. The thing about righteousness, it's a ball and chain. If you have to be right, you're stuck. You're stuck in a story in the past that you have to stand there forever to protect. Yes, they did this to me. That's why righteousness keeps us in a state that we say we don't want to be in. But if you keep thinking that thought, you must want to be that victim. The mind is closed and will not be released. The thought protects projection tightening its chains. Well, there you go, ball and chain. So that distortions are more veiled and more obscured, less easily accessible to doubt, and further kept from reason. What can come between a fixed projection and the aim that it has chosen as its wanted goal? If we carry this idea that I'm less than because of what happened to me, or I'm better than anybody else, in my experience, either one, you make yourself a victim or you make yourself a bully, you're superior, you're inferior, either one of those extremes is because that is your wanted goal. When you take something like this section in the Course in Miracles, what is forgiveness? And you break it down with honesty. Am I doing this? Am I holding the story that I'm a victim? Why do I want that? And you just ask yourself, why do I want that? Usually you're going to come to the recognition of two things. One, it's familiar. You've had it for a long time. Your mom did it, your dad did it. It's familiar. It's a frequency you've been swimming inside of. It's familiar. The other one is because we're so scared of being wrong. Well, if I'm not what I'm familiar with, then what am I? So we hold on to that because we're afraid of the unknown. But here's what's so amazing. The truth sets us free, but the truth cannot be known to one who holds on to the lies. So just bringing it into doubt, finding somebody who overcame that is such a helpful part of the practice. Well, if they could do it, maybe so can I. That was for me. That's what Jesus did for me. When I started my journey, I was like, oh my gosh, if Jesus could forgive, so can I. If he can do it, I know I can do it because I didn't see myself. I didn't put Jesus was never on a pedestal for me. Jesus always felt so human, so familiar, but at the same time, so otherworldly because of the love, the forgiveness that he extended that was almost impossible in my mind, impossible to extend forgiveness to somebody who kills you. And then I decided, well, if he can do it, so can I. I want to be at that level of frequency. And that's when you have to get honest. Well, then what do I need to do to get to that level of frequency? Jesus gave us a Course in Miracles, filled 1,000 pages of how to do that. But if you argue with the Course, if you say, well, yes, but not this part, then you don't really want it. And again, that's where honesty comes in. Because with total and complete freedom comes total and complete responsibility for thinking only the thoughts that allow you to have the experience of the frequency of 5D. That's why not everybody is going to, just because you talk it, you cannot have the ability to enter into the kingdom of heaven. That's why they say, it's easier for a camel to enter through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. You cannot buy your way into the fifth dimension. As a matter of fact, you have to strip your way to get into the fifth dimension. You've got to drop everything that the third dimension holds dear. Paragraph 3. An unforgiving thought does many things. In frantic action, it pursues its goal, twisting and overturning what it sees as interfering with its chosen path. Distortion is its purpose and the means by which it would accomplish it as well. It sets about its furious attempts to smash reality without concern for anything that would appear to pose a contradiction to its point of view. Look back on your life. How many times in your righteousness did you hurt a relationship? Did you totally, completely did things that people just, they gave up on you, that we don't want to be around you, that your righteousness became the thing that they just feared being around? We've all done that. We all have to get honest that our controlling ways caused a lot of suffering. Now, we are not here to say, oh, my controlling ways hurt other people. That would totally defeat what this is saying. But we have to go through the time where we have to do, basically, you got to take this inventory. You've got to be honest. They say that when we die, we're going to have to go through, the process of a life review. You can do a life review after you die, certainly. That's an option. But we are in the time of ascension where we do the life review now, where we see how feeding the egoic story kept us in a state of suffering, ourselves and others. We are looking at what we've done, not to blame ourselves, not to punish others, but to recognize that to continue to believe the lies of the ego is to continue to perpetuate the suffering that we must face and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Not to blame ourselves or others, but to recognize that we don't want to play that game anymore. Because the ego is a master manipulator. And if you don't take responsibility for saying no to your ego, it's going to manipulate you, even with spiritual information, which is why the ego gets spiritualized. Everybody has to go through that. Another one of the teachings that Jesus gave us, called the Way of Mastery, like a follow-up to A Course in Miracles, tells you the spiritual ego is the last egg to be cracked. That is why we have to acknowledge that we get all spiritual and we can talk it all day long, but we're not walking it, because in the recognition of what we are not extending, the love, the light, the lightness, if we're not extending that, we need to acknowledge that we're the ones doing that. And then hold ourselves accountable for why. Why do I keep blaming or shaming or regurgitating the same old story? But you got to start with, why do I want this? Because if you're doing it, you at some level you want it. And the only reason you would want it is because you're not ready for the responsibility of liberation. I still need to hold on to my story for a little longer. I'm not prepared for that much freedom. So then be honest with yourself. If you're not ready for freedom, then you're not ready for the fifth dimension. So stop trying to get to the fifth dimension and do your third dimensional work to free yourself, with honesty, with gentleness, and then say, okay, now I'm ready. And when you're ready, don't look back. When you're ready, say, I'm accepting that I am as God created me. I'm accepting my perfection, my wholeness, and everybody else's. Then you're ready. But the ego has us wanting to get to the fifth dimension, wanting to get enlightened, wanting to get to, transcendence. Because in the wanting to get there, you avoid being here doing the work that keeps you here. Does that make sense? Give me a nod of the head, because I can see your beautiful faces. Yes, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? The ego is a trap. It's a ball and chain that we don't even see it's happening because we are so identified with those thoughts as being who we are. Not that what we are is the one who can question those thoughts. What we are is the one that needs to be aware of those thoughts and begin to sort them out. If you have, joy and suffering within you, why are you continuing to do suffering if you say you want joy? That's because you've got to recognize that suffering comes from the thoughts that you hold about yourself and others. I mean, because what you believe about you, you believe about others. That's why we have to extend to others what we say we want for ourselves. Paragraph 4. Forgiveness, on the other hand, instead of the unforgiving thoughts of the ego, forgiveness, on the other hand, is still and quietly does nothing. The ego is conniving and plotting revenge and who I'm going to take down and who needs to be caught and who needs to be put on trial and who needs to be shot and who needs to be, in solitary confinement. The ego is constantly plotting. Forgiveness doesn't do anything, because forgiveness is the light in me sees the light in you. This is the whole term of namaste. Spirit in me sees spirit in you. Period. End of story. What else is there to say? If you want to say something else, it's like, okay, spirit in me, see spirit in you. Let's go have fun. Like a child. Let's just go play. No grudges, nothing. Nobody needs to be condemned. We're going to come around to that in a second, why this is coming up at this time. So forgiveness, on the other hand, is still and quietly does nothing. It offends no aspect of reality, nor seeks to twist it to appearances it likes. It merely looks and waits and judges not. He who would not forgive must judge, for he must justify his failure to forgive. This is, again, where honesty kicks in. Why are you not forgiving? You're not forgiving because you want to be right about what was done to you. You want to perpetuate the victim story. Failure to forgive is to justify the 3D story. But he who would forgive himself must learn to welcome truth exactly as it is. That's why you cannot forgive yourself until you forgive everybody else. Because we are all light beings who incarnated, made a decision in the mind of God. Oh, I'm separate from God. And we create this entire experience of pain and suffering to lose ourselves inside of this, to make ourselves feel important. And once you can see in another the light in them, and you're like, I see the light in you. That's what I had to do with my son. That's what I had to do with my then husband Ken. It's like once I got it, wait a second. These people are doing these things that are hurting themselves. Once I stopped thinking, okay, they have power to hurt me. Once I decided, nope, I am as God created me. I'm just going to enjoy witnessing, being a witness to how you two are wanting to live your lives. And when I decided they can't hurt me, that's when I began to see, wow, they are hurting because they don't remember who they are. That judgment shifted like instantaneously into a deep empathy, the empathy that the course teaches, where I decided to say, you know what, brothers, because I told my son, I'm going to stop. We're going to stop looking at each other like a mother and your child. We're brother and sister here. We're equals in this journey. I'm not going to see you as less than. And I started focusing on his light. I started focusing on Ken's light. Something happened in me. And from that place on, this is exactly what happened. That's when I learned to really forgive myself. The last sentence. But who would forgive himself must learn to welcome truth exactly as it is. If I'm a powerful being of love and light and I can change my mind, so can they. If they're not changing their mind, it's because they don't want to. I need to honor that they are living the journey that they want to live. Now, nothing was personal anymore. Now I just saw everybody as somebody who is choosing the experience that they're having. They don't need to change to make me happy. My happiness is not dependent on what any other human does. My happiness is established within me by God through my acceptance that I want to do God's will. And if God just wants me to have a fun and easy life, hello, why not allow that? Why not let that be my reality? I've already tried the other one. I tried it. It's not fun. Repetitive, regurgitating the same crap over and over again. Been there, done that. I have the t-shirt. I don't want the 3D experience anymore. So for me not to have the 3D experience, I've got to put me in 5D. In 3D, 5D, it's all a state of beingness. It's a state of consciousness that you operate from. It's not a place you go to. We're not going to pack our suitcases and go to 5D, but metaphorically, we're going to drop the suitcases of the 3D. We're going to drop the weights, the density of the lies and the distortions. We're going to set all beings free, because if we don't set them free, we are not free. If you have somebody, you're bounding somebody into being your victimizer, then that ball and chain, you're connected to it. The only way to release that is you have to release yourself. You've got to say, nope, I don't want to be there anymore. But the ego is crafty. It's going to tell you what you, we got to hold them accountable. You're stuck there. But it must be what you want. Paragraph 5, do nothing then and let forgiveness show you what to do. Through him who is your guide, your savior and protector, strong in hope and certain of your ultimate success, he has forgiven you already. For such is his function given him by God. Now must you share his function and forgive whom he has saved, whose sinlessness he sees, and whom he honors as the Son of God. So the Holy Spirit is the voice for God within us. Every time you hear that voice that says, they're my brother, they're my sister, they're sinless, they're innocent, that's the Holy Spirit reminding you, even if your ego is arguing, no, they're not sinless. No, did you see what they did? Did you see what he did to so many people? Well, interestingly enough, when I was sitting this morning in my time going, okay, Jesus, what we're going to talk about today, and this came up, I immediately knew why Jesus wanted me to make forgiveness such an important piece. Because today is a day that in this 3D world, we have one of our brothers, one of our holy brothers, and we know him as Dr. Fauci. He is coming before, I don't remember if it's Congress or Senate. He's coming before the government to speak to the things that he did as the one who was in charge of the NIH, the National Institute for Health, that oversaw the whole COVID thing, that oversaw all of the regulations around medicine, around medical, that basically oversaw the health and well-being of this country, and something that was respected around the world, so looked upon by other organizations like the WHO, the World Health Organization. And Brother Fauci lied and did things that were in the 3D world, very unloving. A lot of things were done out of greed. A lot of things were done to benefit those with power, for them to make more money, including himself. And now he is being brought before the government to be held accountable. So I want to ask you, you can be in 4 groups. Do you want to be in the control group where your ego gets to say how bad he is and he should just be held accountable, and yes, he should be shot or he should be in prison forever. He should pay for his sins and his crimes against humanity. You can let your ego definitely take you down that path. You can get curious and go, is there another way? I'm not quite sure where I stand on this yet. I kind of think he's guilty. He did something that's wrong. He did something that was selfish. At least you're being honest in recognizing he did things that were unloving, but I'm not going to take a stand yet because I'm still curious about another way. Or you're going to move to the third place, which is in the unlearning phase, where you recognize, well, just like me, he has an ego. Just like me, he forgot who he is. Just like me, he entered into this story to play this role that has affected, millions, actually billions of people. And, but at the same time, I'm not, I can't be judge and jury. I'm cultivating a relationship with my soul. So at this point, I'm going to be neutral because I'm not going to take a position. I've done the same thing and I'm looking for God to forgive me. So I'm going to remain neutral. So let me repeat these 3 choices: condemn him and be clear that you know what he deserves. Move into curiosity. There's got to be another way, but I'm not sure what it is yet. But he did something wrong, and there's a choice here between love and fear. But he did something wrong, but I'm not necessarily going to go to the condemning. Move to the third place, which is I'm going to be neutral because I too am looking to be forgiven by God, I too am learning what true forgiveness is about. Or do you want to step into wisdom? A wisdom that says that if you join with Jesus in forgiving him, for he knew not what he did, it's only because you have decided that you're letting yourself off the hook, that you want freedom more than anything, that you are clear that God has already forgiven you. As a matter of fact, let's be honest here. God doesn't even need to forgive us because God never sees our sins. God only knows us as holy children who wandered off into, the ethers, the universe, which is our playground. And we kind of wandered off and got caught up in playing a game of hide and seek. And God's not upset in any way, shape, or form. But we're learning from Brother Jesus that once we forgive ourselves for having wandered off away from the light that God created us as, the only way for us to return to that light and feel it fully is to give it away. It is for giving it to another. True forgiveness means he didn't do anything to any soul. Even if this group has the evidence of how many people got killed or hurt or maimed, this group knows no soul was ever affected in the making of this movie. You get to decide, where are you going to stand? Are you going to let the ego be the one that convinces you that righteousness and revenge are necessary? Then be honest. There's a lot of work to do still. If you can stand here fully or somewhere along the path in total honesty and acknowledge, you know what, I want some revenge, but I can feel that I want revenge, but I know that's only going to set me back. I don't want to do that to myself. If you're looking to be that honest, join us in the Awareness Academy. That's what the whole purpose of the Awareness Academy is twofold. For those who really are being honest and want to do the work to free themselves, or for those who feel like, I'm already being pretty honest and I want to be with like-minded community vibing at that level of that kind of conscious love that the world needs now more than anything. Because where two or more are gathered, there is a love that is only possible through our willingness to recognize in the other that this is something that is, not only is it simple to extend love, but it is necessary for us to anchor the kind of frequency that if we hold this, and not only hold it in ourselves, but if we share this with others, if people ask us, well, what do you think about the Fauci trials? And you go, I already forgave Brother Fauci. What? Look what you're doing. You're causing doubt. You're causing confusion in the mind of those who may need to make a shift. But they're not going to do that unless they have somebody who shows them the way. Jesus showed us the way. 2,000 years ago, he showed us how to forgive. Today, are we prepared to show others that we have learned how to forgive? That's what's at stake here. Is the ascension of the planet depends on those who are willing to shine their light. And I'll tell you, if I can do it, I know you can do it too. It's just a matter of willingness. So if you want to do this with us, join us in the academy. If you just want to do it on your own, that's all right. Study the course, embody what the course is teaching. That's all I've got today. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. So good to see you. I hope everybody got something out of this transmission. Yeah, Susie? Oh, awesome. Love that. All right. See the rest of you all later. Bye-bye, everybody.